Dale Earnhardt Sr. is one name that will always be indelible in the thrilling world of NASCAR. Come explore the thrilling turns and turns of his last few minutes on the track with us. Often referred to as the Intimidator, his aggressive style of racing defined a period until the 2001 Daytona 500 abruptly pulled away. Fast forward 30 seconds to learn the terrifying specifics of that terrible day that altered the course of NASCAR forever. In the previous NASCAR Winston Cup Series, now known as the NASCAR Cup Series, Ralph Dale Earnhardt was an American professional stock car driver and racing team owner who competed from 1975 to 2001. He was most known for driving the number 3 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing. The Intimidator, the Man in Black, and Ironhead were among the epithets he was given for his aggressive racing style, until his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. entered the Cup Series in 1999. Earnhardt was more well recognized by the nicknames Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Dale Sr. Ranked among the 50 greatest drivers in NASCAR history in 1998, he is considered one of the best drivers in the sport's history. He started his racing career in the World 600 in 1975, the third child of racing driver Ralph Earnhardt and Martha Earnhardt. For his 26-year career, Earnhardt won 76 Winston Cup races, including the 1998 Daytona 500 and 4 Winston 500s, 1990, 1994, 1999, and 2000. He is one of just 4 drivers in NASCAR history to have won 100 Winston Cup races overall, having won 24 non-point exhibition races, in addition to his 76 career points victories. After colliding with Sterling Marlin and Ken Schrader on the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500, American stock car racing driver and team owner Dale Earnhardt was instantly killed by a bacillus skull fracture on February 18, 2001. A short while after, Halifax Medical Center declared him deceased. At 5:16 p.m. EST at 22:16 UTC, Earnhardt's formal death was announced at the nearby Halifax Medical Center. He was 49 years old when the collision occurred. 4 days later, his funeral service was placed at Charlotte, North Carolina's Calvary Church. After Adam Petty in May 2000, Kenny Irwin Jr. in July 2000, and Tony Roper in October 2000, Earnhardt became the 4th driver in the history of NASCAR to die from a basilar skull fracture in 8 months, following Earnhardt's widely publicized death, which was watched on a live television broadcast with over 17 million viewers. NASCAR Auto Racing implemented many safety measures. NASCAR put a heavy emphasis on safety following Earnhardt's passing. They developed the car of tomorrow, a roof hatch escape system, installed safer barriers at oval tracks, mandated the use of head and neck restraints, and set strict new inspection guidelines for seats and seatbelts. Ultimately, these efforts resulted in the creation of a next-generation race car designed with increased driver safety. No driver has lost their life while competing in one of NASCAR's 3 main series since Earnhardt's passing. Earnhardt passed away while taking part in the Daytona 500, an automobile race at Daytona International Speedway sanctioned by NASCAR, in 2001. Talladega Superspeedway, and that track's events necessitated the use of carburetor restrictor plates due to NASCAR regulations. Earnhardt expressed his displeasure to the media in 2000, the year before he passed away, about new limitations placed by NASCAR on the vehicle's shocks and springs. The rules took NASCAR Winston Cup racing and made it some of the sorriest racing, Earnhardt said. They removed the drivers and staff from control of the racing. Our cars are not adjustable to drive the way we want them to. The racing at Daytona was just destroyed. It's absurd to have to race in this manner. For the vehicles competing in the Winston Cup Series races at Daytona and Talladega, NASCAR created a new aerodynamic package in response to comments like Earnhardt's. Earnhardt passed 17 cars in 4 laps to win the Fall 2000 Talladega race, which turned out to be his 76th and last career victory during the first running of this aerodynamic package. This package, intended to keep cars close together and enable more frequent passing at high speeds, was used for the first time at the track for a 500-mile, 800-kilometer race, the Daytona 500 in 2001. In the end, though, Earnhardt would not win a single race during Speed Weeks in 2001, a first for many years. Earnhardt trailed Tony Stewart by a point in the Budweiser shootout. In the Gatorade Twin 1:25 qualifying race, Earnhardt was also unsuccessful in winning. Earnhardt looked assured and at ease on the morning of the race. He led 17 laps as the race's front runner. Just 2 caution flags were raised in the first 3 quarters of the race. On lap 49, Jeff Purvis struck the wall as he was coming out of turn 4, and on lap 157, rookie Kurt Busch, trying to pass Joe Nemechek, struck the front stretch wall and skidded across the infield onto pit road. With 2 of his team's cars racing first and second ahead of him, the blue number 15 Chevrolet driven by Michael Waltrip, and the red number 8 Chevrolet driven by his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. Earnhardt's car was in 7th place on lap 173. A big crash on the back straightaway on that lap spectacularly eliminated 18 cars. In the crash were Earnhardt's fellow driver Steve Park, Rusty, who would come back to finish 3rd, and Kenny Wallace, Jeff Gordon, who would go on to win the Winston Cup in 2001, and Robbie Gordon, Bobby, the reigning Winston Cup champion, and Terry Labonte, Mark Martin, Tony Stewart, Elliott Sadler, Jeff Burton, and Ward Burton, who had led the most laps in the race thus far, with 53, Jerry Nadeau, John Andretti, Buckshot Jones, Dale Jarrett, the previous winner of the Daytona 500, and Andy Houston. Robbie Gordon changed into Ward Burton at the Turn 2 exit, which is when the crash started. Stewart was struck by Ward, spun around and collided with the outer wall, and was propelled skyward above Gordon. Then Stewart went upside down twice, snagging Bobby Labonte's bonnet as he did so. He then stood on his front wheels and coasted to a stop in the infield, leaving Burton's car to spin sideways and gather the majority of the field behind it. Waltrip and Earnhardt Jr. were still leading when the race resumed on lap 180. For the following 3 laps, Waltrip was leading, and then Sterling Marlin, who had defeated Earnhardt in the Gatorade duel, led. Throughout the following few laps, Waltrip and Earnhardt Jr. traded the lead numerous times. Before Marlin could get a chance to overtake, Waltrip, Earnhardt Jr., and Earnhardt Sr. were leading the field as the laps were coming to an end. Less than 2 laps remained, and Darrell Waltrip of Fox Sports said, "Sterling had beat the front end off of that old Dodge, Marlin's car, just trying to get around Dale Earnhardt Sr." On the last lap, Earnhardt was still in 3rd place as the vehicles reached Turn 3, Marlin's number 40. Dodge was following him closely in the bottom lane. Rusty Wallace's navy blue number 2. Ford was right behind Earnhardt, while Ken Schroeder, driving a yellow M&M's sponsored number 36 Pontiac, was positioned on the high lane above Earnhardt. The news of Earnhardt's passing circulated widely. The day was dubbed Black Sunday by one publication. Heartbroken supporters gathered at Daytona International Speedway and the offices of Richard Childress Racing and Dale Earnhardt, Inc. on the night of the collision. The Time magazine the following week had a profile on Earnhardt, and almost all of the country's major television networks aired a video from the race. On February 22, 2001, Earnhardt's public funeral service was placed at Charlotte, North Carolina's Calvary Church. Both police and a NASCAR-approved investigation were prompted by his death. Almost all of the investigation's details were made public, reversing a long-standing NASCAR policy. Several days following the collision, supporters who believed Sterling Marlin was to fault for Earnhardt's demise sent him hate mail and threats of death. In addition to asking everyone who loved his father to quit placing blame for his passing, Dale Earnhardt Jr. released Marlin from all obligations. Bill Simpson, whose business Simpson Performance Products manufactured the seatbelt Earnhardt wore during the race, revealed he had also received death threats from irate fans in the week after the crash. 5 days following the collision, Earnhardt's seatbelt harness broke on the left lap belt, according to a statement from NASCAR officials. The fatal basilar skull fracture that occurred in Earnhardt was likely caused by his chin striking the steering wheel, according to NASCAR's medical specialist Dr. Steve Bohannon. This raised the possibility that Earnhardt would still be alive today if his seatbelt hadn't snapped. Although the lap belt was not shattered or ripped when the seatbelts were unbuckled to remove Earnhardt from the vehicle, the initial paramedics on the site insisted that the seatbelts had been slack. Though each of the EMTs who treated Earnhardt following the collision stated that the harness's buckle position was off-center by 4 to 8 inches, 10 to 20 centimeters, NASCAR's inquiry concluded that this would not have been possible if the lap belt had not snapped. Belt failure was not a major factor in Earnhardt's death, according to a later medical assessment. The seat belts utilized in almost every NASCAR competitor's vehicle at the time of the accident were produced by Simpson Performance Products. The company's creator, Bill Simpson, stated that the belt had failed because it had been placed in an unauthorized way to improve Earnhardt's comfort, an assertion backed by a few people who were aware of the circumstances. Since autopsy data were generally public records in Florida, sports writer Ed Hinton of the Orlando Sentinel attempted to obtain images and autopsy records of Earnhardt for research purposes. Teresa Earnhardt, Earnhardt's wife, requested that the court seal the documents. Following a brief legal struggle, the parties decided to assign Duke University crash injury expert Dr. Barry Myers to conduct an independent investigation into Earnhardt's death. NASCAR did, however, want to encourage their use. The majority of drivers had already started acting willingly by donning the devices. At the Pepsi 400, by Mayer at Michigan International Speedway, 2 days before the report's release, 41 of 43 drivers wore them. Blaze Alexander lost his life in a two-car collision during the event's last laps on October 4, 2001. During an ARCA race at Charlotte Motor Speedway that was part of the autumn NASCAR racing weekend. Ironically, Kerry Earnhardt, the eldest son of Earnhardt, was the second driver vying with Alexander for the lead. Alexander drove into the wall, causing Earnhardt's car to spin on its roof, but he was still leading when the race was stopped with 4 laps remaining. Earnhardt, who was unharmed, was pronounced the winner because the race was never restarted due to the extent of the accident's damage. When we consider Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s legacy, we must acknowledge that his sudden passing was a turning point in NASCAR history. Since that terrible day, no driver has died thanks to the posthumous safety improvements that revolutionized the sport. Get updates on more compelling stories from the world of racing and beyond by subscribing now.